The Honda Civic containing the remains of Kathleen Thomas, age 27, and Rebecca Ann Dowski, age 21, were found on October 12, 1986, a Sunday. The following is what I believe I saw on Friday, October 10th, 1986, which I have repeated several times over the decades to various people involved in this investigation. The week ending Friday, October 10th, 1986, I was returning from a Defense Mapping Agency, Department of Defense, week-long seminar in Washington, D.C. That agency is where I went for Navy shore duty in August 1985, and I was assigned as a lecturer. I was issued a rental car, and after the morning dismissal and dropping off the lieutenant at the airport, I chose to take the scenic route home. A line of thunderstorms moved in as I was going through Manassas, Virginia, and the weather stayed stormy all the way south. Picking up the Colonial Parkway around Williamsburg, my destination was the Jamestown, Surrey Ferry, because then I could take Route 10 to my mobile home at Burwell's Bay, Isle of Wight County. But by now I really had to pee. So to my left I spotted a little scenic parking area on the shores of the James River, so I pulled into it. But because of a grassy knoll at the top of the hill on the parkway, I didn't see the lone car until I had pulled on down. It looked to be an early model off-white Honda, and someone was in the driver's seat. I rolled down my driver's side window so I could see better, and I slowly circled in front of and around the car, but the driver didn't move. As I recall, the driver had dirty blonde shoulder-length hair, and it was covering the face, so I didn't know if it was a man or a woman. Toward the shore side of the lot was a stand of pines, and then in front of that, a short grassy open area. I stopped in the lower far corner, but decided against public urination because of that parked car. This is how I remember the scene. The Honda was centered, and it was facing the stand of trees and the shore. I remember the waves were breaking over the riprap because it was really windy and the sky was really dark, but it was still light out. It was twilight. It was only sprinkling rain on and off, but the wind was still kicking up waves because it was high tide. It was just before dusk and very cloudy, but like I said, there was still sunlight. Every time I glanced over toward the car, there was no movement, no sounds like a radio or talking. I never got out of that rental car, which was a four-door white 1986 model. Instead, I slowly drove behind and around the Honda to go back out. With my window still open, I could see the driver's head against the headrest, and whomever it was had shoulder-length hair cut in sort of a straight-across fashion at the shoulders. I think that the driver's side window on the Honda was also down. There was never any movement or sound as I slowly pulled around and then back up to the entrance to the parkway. Turning left out of the turnaround, I went on down Colonial Parkway toward the Jamestown Ferry, and I only saw one car with lights on coming from the ferry direction. I went a few miles, and I got down to where the white rail fence is, and I pulled off to the side. Then I walked around to the other side of the car, and I relieved myself. I never saw any traffic from either direction. And then I pulled out. I arrived at the ferry landing right at dark, sunset, and I bought my ticket. It wasn't free back then, and I held on to it for my expense report. Now this part is a little foggy. I don't know if I noticed the news reports about the murder at that time, so it may not have been until the Ragged Island murders a year later that I called the FBI hotline. Since I was in Isle of Wight and stationed at Naval Air Station Norfolk, I had to drive to work. So I was driving to work at the naval base that rainy morning when I saw the Isle of Wight County deputy's car shining its lights on a pickup truck in the parking lot at Ragged Island. It was still dark, but I noticed that the truck's door was open and it looked like the headlights were on. Well, that evening or the next day, I heard the report of those kids missing and possible link to the first murders. I must not have made it clear to the hotline operator that I called for the FBI that what I was about to describe to him was the Honda at Colonial Parkway and not the Ragged Island murders, because his statement to me was that I was wrong and that they were seen at a party late at night. Like I said, this last part is confusing to me. It has been many years later, and on an anniversary I saw a picture of the Honda and I realized I still had something to say. So I contacted the retired state police detective that was working on the case and met him at the Hardys in Smithfield, and I explained the whole thing to him. He apparently was convinced I was not confessing to the crime, and he took down my statement. But that was the last I ever heard from him. So back in maybe 2006, I tried again over the internet site for the murders, and someone actually called me. So I repeated my story again, which I have never changed. And at the end, this gentleman asked me if I had seen a green pickup truck, which struck me. I'm not sure the date, but a long time ago there was a bad accident on the curve on Route 10 at Bacon's Castle in Surrey County. It involved a pickup truck with a camper shell. Seems this fellow took the curve too fast and was somehow decapitated in the wreck. What was odd about it is he lived in Williamsburg area, but was on his way to work at the shipyard. As the retired state detective asked me, was that your regular route? Up to the point that I called the hotline in 1987 about the Ragged Island murders. That's the best recollection I have. After that, it's all conjecture. And here, dealing with the search for this old parking area, I did take a video of the entire Colonial Parkway a few years ago, and I kept studying it, looking at maps. The problem is the whole parkway beaches and turnarounds and pullovers were reworked during the 1990s. So none of the old landscape or landmarks that you would recognize are still there. And after studying the videos that I had, studying maps, on October 12th of this year, 2016, I went back over there and walked the area. So the following is what I find to be where the old turnaround was, where I first saw the Honda Civic with the lady with the dirty blonde hair in the driver's side. Thank you. Alright, this is where I think that I was able to turn left. As you see, there was an embankment there, so I couldn't see the car down in there. The tripod kind of represents where the parking area was. That's toward Jamestown. So I turned left, and the entrance was down a hillside, and it was circular. I looked over and the water was raging up against the embankment. It was really a nasty windy day. So now I've spotted the faded white or off-white, looked like an early model Honda, not an 86. It was like several years old. Yeah, I really didn't see anybody when I first came in. But as you can tell, you can't see down into that parking area from the parkway if you're just driving past it. So I conjecture that the killer or killers originally decided on Friday to push the car into the James River there. And I believe I interrupted their plans, or his plan, their plans, because it would have been so easy to push that car into that high tide and no one would have looked down at it. But anyway, I drove around the front, and toward that corner I stopped my car and I looked back at the Honda, and I did see somebody sitting in the driver's side, but they weren't moving. I didn't see, they weren't following with their eyes or head as I drove around. And I rolled down my window to get a better look, but I knew I couldn't go to the bathroom there. I couldn't pee there. So I started around the side of the Honda toward the entrance back onto the Colonial Parkway. Again, whoever was in that driver's seat, she kind of had dirty blonde hair, kind of covering the face, but it was blocked at the shoulder. Never turned, never made a sound, and the window was down. I just can't remember if it was all the way down or halfway down, but I could see the face pretty clearly, or the head pretty clearly. So then I went on up to the parkway, and I would have turned left, south toward Jamestown, the Jamestown Ferry. I didn't see any other traffic until I went down the road there. No traffic either direction, and they would have had their headlights on. That's the curve I remember, and that's Jamestown Ferry direction. Alright, so I continued on toward Jamestown. It was sprinkling, still kind of twilight. You could still see the side of the road, and I really still had to go pee. I remember one car about right in here coming from the ferry, and it was a sedan with its lights on, and it just went on past me. I don't remember brake lights or anything like that. So by now I'm looking for a place to pull off, and I don't see a good spot. I'm not seeing any cars that evening coming behind me or coming at me. But that's when I spotted a place to pull off because of that white rail fence coming over. And that's why I remember it, because it was a farm area, and it's the only area with any civilization there. So I pulled over on that grassy area and took a leak. And I got back in my car and headed for the Jamestown Ferry. And I'm thinking I got there about 6 or so in the evening. I lost my ferry ticket through the years.